Okay, so thank you everyone for joining our annual Fireside chat today. This is our really exciting collaboration between Women in Data Science Trinidad and Tobago and Women in Data Science San Jose Youth. I am the Women in Data Science Trinidad and Tobago Ambassador, Dr. Letetia Addison. We also have Miss Audrey Young. She is the Women in Data Science San Jose Youth Ambassador. And today we are sharing a collaboration with some of our really highly esteemed and very talented female data scientists, data-driven engineers, software engineers, persons working in different industries involving data science and AI applications. And on this very auspicious occasion of International Women's Day, we want to talk to you about building futures really to empower a smarter data-driven tomorrow. So this is really a nice casual type of panel discussion where we'll be going through some of the perceptions, the journeys, the attitudes of our females, both regionally and internationally, who are working in these different spaces. And they're going to kind of share with you some of their perspectives and experiences and give you some context for how you could map your journey based on what they have been through. So before we get started, let me just give, for persons who are not too familiar with what Women in Data Science does, WiDS, as we call it, elevates women in data science globally. And we aim to celebrate, inspire, educate, and support through various means, which involves conferences. Fun fact, WiDS started as a one-day conference at Stanford University. And since then, it has grown to over 200 regional events worldwide. There is also a very popular global annual datathon that we call the WiDS Datathon Challenge, which happens between January and April of this year and has been happening since 2015 as well. And it's always a social impact challenge. If you want more information on the challenge, this year's current challenge is based on women's brain health. You can go onto the WiDS page. We will put it in the chat for you for the worldwide page where you could get more information on the datathon and being able to enter that challenge. For any data science enthusiasts, whether no bias towards gender or otherwise, right? In terms of other events, we also have podcasts. We have WiDS Next Gen events, which are outreach in different countries in terms of secondary and even primary school outreach. And then we also host a lot of workshops and webinars to facilitate persons who would like to continue in the field. Now, just to kind of get things started, I wanted to get a context from the persons who are joining us. What is your data science background? Even if you're not specifically working in data science, what is your background in general? And that way we could get to know each other a little bit. So I will give you all about a minute or so, if so much, to just add your responses in the chat so we could have a nice casual discussion, and maybe we can see how some of us have similarities or differences when it comes to our what we do currently. And then we will get into some of the introductions for not only the panelists today, but also our ambassadors who will be your moderators, myself and Audrey. We will be able to kind of share a little bit of our background. So anybody who is in the room currently, let us know in the chat, what is your data science background or what's your background in general? I'm just going to check and see what we have so far. Anybody wants to tell us in the chat or even put on your mic and tell us what's your background, what current job or field are you in? Anyone? Or just drop in the chat what you are doing currently. Even if you're not specifically working, as I said, in data science, you could let us know what's your current field. Do we have any data scientists in the room? No? Anybody else? So any other jobs? What careers are y'all in currently? Don't be shy. Okay, I see we have someone, right? So Leslie-Ann, and Leslie-Ann is actually one of our contributors with Trinidad and Tobago, and she's a newly minted data scientist as well. Anyone else? I think we also have a couple of our past women in data science mentors as well. I have seen Kimberly here as well. She is also has been working in the field. And I see, and well, of course, Priya is also one of our, Priya is actually not a data scientist, but Priya has been working very well with us as a past with co-ambassador, and she also helps facilitate a lot of these workshops, and she is in psychology. So just to mention that even if you're not specifically in data science, and you're in some kind of hybrid field or some sort of multidisciplinary field, it's really nice to have you here. Adriana says she has an M.Sc in statistics. Very nice. Statistics is part of my background as well. So happy to have you here, Adriana. So we can continue to get to know each other in the chat. Feel free to ask any questions. But today the main event is really to get to know our panelists. So first off, before we do that, as I mentioned before, Audrey and I are going to moderate the session. And I would like Audrey to just start with a little bit of an introduction about herself and what she does in terms of the WiDS San Jose youth. So Audrey?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Audrey, and I'm currently a high schooler, and I'm an aspiring data scientist. So with San Jose Youth, we partner and do events to bridge data science and bring that to the next gen and inspire them. So right now we do like a podcast, which is Carpe Datum. So we talk to different women in the field to get their perspective and share what they do from day-to-day life. And then we also have hosted some data-thons for middle schooler and high schoolers. And we've also done a Netflix data set event where middle schoolers just get into the data and then do some visualizations on that.
Nice. Thank you for that, Audrey. And I had the pleasure of meeting Audrey last year at the the worldwide conference, and such a pleasure. Audrey is extremely talented. So really, really happy to have her on board to really be a part of this. For those of you who don't know me, I am Letetia Addison. Besides being a WiDS Trinidad and Tobago ambassador, I am a project officer and lecturer at the University of the West Indies here in Trinidad and Tobago. I work a lot with institutional data and building data-driven models in terms of higher education. I also teach statistics. I lecture statistics courses, so I'm happy to see Adriana's into statistics. And I also do a lot of research with respect to AI in climate change and other exciting applications of AI in this current space. So really happy to be here to also facilitate this, as well as other workshops that we host. So with Trinidad and Tobago, hosts a lot of workshops, usually geared towards the data challenge, justice persons with the data challenge, but also in general, we do a lot of outreach to get persons who don't know what data science is to understand what it is. So we have been hosting a lot of data science workshops and webinars. So you can check our YouTube channel and some of our social media links Priya will place in the chat, also for Audrey's team as well. And it's really what we're both trying to do, Audrey and I, in our different spaces, is really to really inspire, motivate, elevate, and support persons on their journey with respect to using data science wherever they see it fit, be it in their career or otherwise. So really happy to be here to help host and moderate the session. And I would like to turn over now to our very esteemed panelists today to really give you a little bit of an insight about themselves before we jump into the various questions. So let me start with Mercedes. You want to give a little bit of your background?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Mercedes Quammie, and I am an education researcher. So I work at the Ministry of Education in Trinidad and Tobago. I mainly work with education data, so both data from standardized exams as well as survey data that we would have collected from different schools. I also recently completed a master's in data science, and I would say my biggest area of interest in terms of data science research is predicting students at risk of not just school failure, but also different outcomes, so suspension, different health outcomes as well.
Very nice. Thanks for that, Mercedes. And Mercedes, of course, has been one of our mentors in with Trinidad and Tobago for how many years, Mercedes? Since 2022, right?
Yeah.
Yes, and she's contributed a lot as well. So really happy to have her here. Audrey, you want to introduce one of your speakers?
Yeah, so we have Angelina. She is currently working at Databricks as a solutions architect. And she is, I'm not sure. Yeah.
I think you're on mute, Audrey.
You're mute, yeah. But Angelina, at any rate, go ahead. Yeah, sorry to introductions, yeah.
Sure, yeah, thanks, Audrey. I'm Angelina. I, as she mentioned, am an account executive at Databricks, but I started as a data scientist working at Hitachi Solutions, primarily in Azure Databricks, and kind of specializing in NLP for healthcare. And with that, that brought me to Databricks as a solutions architect, and then most recently, an account executive. So thank you for having me. Excited to be here. Nice to meet everyone.
Great to meet you, Angelina. And thank you for that. So next we move to Kirstin.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kirstin. I'm an optometrist. I am trying to break into data science, so I'm currently working on completing my master's in data science. Previously, I've worked in an academic setting as a clinical supervisor. I've worked in public healthcare, and I've also worked privately as an optometrist. So I'm trying to bridge healthcare and data science.
So now what we want to do is, I think we want to jump into some general questions. So I will turn over to Audrey if you want to start asking each of our speakers the first general question in terms of, I mean, right now we're in a very AI-based space, as most of y'all would know. So Audrey, I think you want to start off kind of asking them about what are perceptions of the skills needed.
Yeah, so we have a couple general questions that all of the speakers are going to answer. And the first one is, what new skills do you think data scientists need to develop because of AI's growing role in the field? And I'll have anyone who wants to answer, they can do that.
Maybe we can start over with Angelina.
Yeah, sure. I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
Yeah, sure. So what new skills do you think data scientists need to develop because of AI's growing role in the field?
I would say just being able to work every day with like an AI agentic system. I believe like if you are not using those systems daily or in your job currently, then you potentially won't have a job. I mean, I know that's kind of like dramatic to say, but I think some of these large language models and agentic systems are here to stay, and they're only going to develop further. And so I think like as a data scientist, you have to incorporate that more and more into your role. And so I would say just becoming very familiar with how to become more efficient as a user or as a developer with those systems in place.
I agree. I think,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's really true about what you're saying, because if you don't use a skill, you're gonna like lose it. And just knowing the landscape of today's role and how much data is driving our future, I think it is really important to just understand the basics of it.
Yeah, I agree as well. And to go off of what Angelina would have said, I think prompt engineering for me has been really important. Like just at least when working with like LLMs, large language models, it's been really important for me to just know exactly how to prompt it and what to ask for. I would say as well, maybe some of these softer skills to data science. So some of those technical skills can be taken over by AI, but getting into things like data storytelling, I think is a really important skill now.
Kirstin, what about you?
Yeah, I definitely agree that now, especially because we have generative AI and we don't necessarily have to code from scratch instead of having that hard focus on programming. I agree with what Mercedes was saying about communication skills, being able to collaborate with teams that are not necessarily technical to communicate, our message. Also, being able to prioritize framing the problem before, trying to get into the technical side of things, and also looking at the ethical side of, being able to mitigate like the biases or the risks that we might be accumulating due to using AI.
Yeah, that's really, I mean, the three of you all have really hit the nail on the head there. And I think also, just going back to what Angelina mentioned about the agentic systems, especially in terms of research now, even in some of the research that we are currently doing in climate change, being able to work with systems that sort of be agent-based, where they kind of take in data and then they actually are making decisions. I just wanted to ask Angelina one thing as well. Do you have any recommendations in terms of agent-based systems, or any tools or any courses that people may want to look into regarding, like, looking more in that realm, going more into generative AI and agentic systems, which can learn from the data?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I'm biased and would say, there are Databricks courses or, trainings in this space, and it is evolving. So, the coursework, I believe, like, does change, and is updated frequently. Outside of that, I unfortunately don't know of other like training pathways, but I imagine, I'm sure there's some classes maybe in Udemy or, some of those other places, but Databricks does have trainings for pathways
Can you
like
let
that.
us know in the chat, maybe a link or something that, so we can always check it out, because I always like for all of us to learn like what's happening in other spaces, so that'll be perfect. Yeah, so thanks for that, Angelina. Audrey, I'll pass it back to you for the next question.
Yeah, so for the second question, it's how has AI shifted the balance between technical and creative skills required in data science? And we'll have Angelina start with this one too.
Oh, sure. I am so sorry. Can you repeat it again? I was just
sorry,
that's
my fault.
training.
I had to type in at the same time.
Yeah.
Maybe we could start with Kirstin and then come back to Angelina.
Oh yeah, sure.
Kirstin, you want to answer that one? How has it shifted technical and creative skills?
So my thoughts are, because we can use AI to help us handle like technical work, it does allow us to prioritize creativity, to focus more on not necessarily building an experiment, but like how we might want to design the experiment or how we might want to interpret the results that we get, focusing on maybe like novel applications for AI. So I know there's this misconception that like AI is going to replace, technical rigors, but it's really a tool that we can use. We choose the direction that we're driving it, and we decide which problems we're trying to solve and what's the way that we're going to go about it. So it gives us a lot more room for innovation.
Right. Very nice. Mercedes, what do you think about that? And I do agree with that, Kirstin, that I know even with the fact that we might think we might be replaced, it's actually making us think a little bit more outside the box as to how we can be more creative. So, Mercedes?
Yeah, I completely agree with Kirstin. I think it's a tool. I see it that way, and I see it as a really useful tool. And it, like Kirstin said, it really just helps us move away from having to have those, technical coding skills and different technical capacities towards being able to focus on the creative side. So definitely the creative side is gonna, I think, take precedence when it comes to data scientists. And Kirstin would have already mentioned how we frame questions, how we frame problems. That I think is going to be really important, as well as how we interpret the results coming out of the findings, as well as, for me, my favorite part is always the application. So yes, we can use AI to come up with these solutions, but how we can apply these to the technical fields that we're going to be working with, and to in industry, I think that's going to be really important.
Very true. And Angelina, just to piggyback off of what Mercedes said there.
Yeah. I would say that the technical skills are definitely like not as necessary from what I've seen these days. They're definitely still necessary, but like things that Databricks offers, for example, are like auto ML, right? So you're able to just select what sort of what sort of prediction you want. If it's a forecast, if you want to predict your target variable, and then you select the inputs, and then it automatically creates like all hundreds of different models to figure out, which is the best model to predict your target variable based on the evaluation metrics that you select. So I think the creative skills come into play in terms of how do you want to evaluate it? Like, is this model predicting what I actually want it to do, and like monitoring the drift over time? And I don't think I don't know if we have per se that like a comprehension from large language models yet to understand like the context and making a decision of, is this model doing what I want it to do? And predicting, like to someone else's point, like ethically, are these predictions accurate from that perspective as well? So yeah, I think the creativity will come more into play for evaluation of models, and then selecting which ones to put into production based off of that.
Very, very true. And Audrey, next.
Yeah, so we're going to move on to our last general discussion question before we dive into the specific questions. So what would you guys say excites you about the future of AI and data science?
And you can also say what scares you too, right? So yeah. Mercedes, you want to take that one?
Yeah. For me, I think it is really exciting because I consider myself like more of an applied researcher. So it does excite me that, AI can take over some of those more technical aspects. A lot of times they say the biggest part in data science is actually like cleaning the data and preparing the data. And that's not my favorite part. So I'm happy to have, to have those technical sides of it, to have help there. And what excites me the most is being able to actually apply the findings in the real world. Of course, working in education, I'm always excited about social development. So that's what excites me the most, is being able to, make a lot of advancements and be able to apply them in the real world.
And what about you?
So for me, I am excited about how, similar to what Mercedes was saying, how we can use AI to automate tasks and focus more on human creativity and ingenuity. I'm also excited that there's potential for us to tackle problems that would have been too complex for us to try to address traditionally. So just for example, in the field of optometry, there's a worldwide epidemic of childhood myopia, which is short-sightedness, and it's out of control. But the causes is like a number of causes. So it's like screen time, increased screen time, reduced outdoor activity, genetic factors, socioeconomic factors in terms of access to care. So it's difficult to address. So that's one thing where I'm particularly interested in seeing, like how AI and data science and whole could shine. So
fascinating. And Kirstin, we'll delve more into that when we ask you about your personal questions, because that sounds very fascinating to find out more about And Angelina, what about you? What excites you or even scares you about the AI, future of the AI and data science and analytics and this field?
Yeah, I would say, piggybacking off of that, I'm excited for the applications in the healthcare and life science space for sure. I think it'll help accelerate drug discovery. I think it'll help accelerate research and development. On the flip side of it, I am definitely concerned of like super intelligence. I'm sure within our lifetime that will occur, and we just need to make sure that it's safe to some degree. And so that is definitely something that scares me, and we're headed in that direction, no doubt. So
Yeah, that's so true. And we can't really slow the pace down, we just have to try to keep up, which is, yeah, it's like every day there's some new tool, some new application, so it can be overwhelming, but I'm glad that the three of you all mentioned that. Any sentiments from you, Audrey, on that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with what everyone said. It is so powerful what AI can do, and with that power, it does come with a bit of a scare to like what are the possibilities of how it can like take over what we do. And but I think there will always be like a balance between how we bridge our skills and using AI to empower and improve what we're already doing.
Of course, it's very, very true. So it really shows that we really just have to, and having these conversations helps because, I mean, it's really a collaborative effort. So, everyone, we don't want it to be the humans against the machines. I think we should all work together in some ways.
Yeah.
So what we want to do now is that we're going to ask each of our panelists much more personalized questions based on their own trajectory. So we'll be doing two questions per person, but we will do it one per person. We'll go one personal question. So I will start off asking Mercedes, and then we'll have Audrey go to Angelina, then we come back to Kirstin, things like that, and then we'll do the second round of questions. So this is like feeling like a game show, like the more exciting part of it, because I feel like I'm getting to know the speakers personally, and I hope you all will also be really edified by what I have to say. So Mercedes, knowing you and looking at your background, I know you have really dedicated yourself for more than a decade to volunteering, and that's really a huge commitment. And of course, being part of WiDS Trinidad and Tobago as well. So how do you think data science could be harnessed to measure and enhance the impact of volunteer programs? Even those aimed at empowering women worldwide. Of course, today's International Women's Day. So we want to know what your perspectives are on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think data science really could be useful, throughout the life cycle of, a project or a volunteer or an initiative. For me, even from the get-go, I see it as essential to be collecting data and conducting needs assessments before you even begin to implement an initiative, right? And I think data science could be extremely useful in that aspect, collecting data, really identifying what is the need, what is the problem, and what are the barriers that are contributing to that problem existing, right? In terms of measuring the impact, of course, monitoring and evaluation, data science has been useful, and I only see it being even more impactful. I think it could also be used. So we spoke about the application and the data storytelling side. I think it could be used really in a powerful way to show exactly what are the impacts of an initiative in order to garner even more support. So with NGOs and these kinds of initiatives, resource mobilization is really important. So when you have that data and you're able to tell the story to potential donors or even potential volunteers of the impact that you're already having, I think you're able to garner more support that way as well.
That's very, very true. And I think it's really important to keep measuring that impact, because we really want, especially when we do things like this, it's not only, as you said, it's really looking at the data, but also really kind of keeping a tab on what's happening in terms of the space, really integrating others into the space. Like, for instance, having these conversations kind of opens it up to not only our community, we also open it up to an international community as well. So really happy to have Mercedes helping to drive some of the initiatives. And I must mention, she's also helping lead on one of our integrations with school students from age 10 and up, and we're doing a competition. So all of these things I think are really essential parts of the process, and I'm happy to have her on board for that. So I think, Audrey, you want to move to Angelina and her question and see her perspectives as well. So thanks, Mercedes. Yeah.
So for Angelina, she used to work as a solutions architect, and she shifted into her new role at Databricks as an enterprise account executive. So we're going to try and see kind of what the transition is like and the similarities and differences. So having worked as a solutions architect at Databricks, you've gained valuable skills in designing and implementing technical solutions. So what aspects of that role stood out to you as similar or different from your data science work? And now as you transition into your new role as an enterprise account executive, what excites you most about the shift, and how has it been so far?
Thank you. Yeah, I would say it's not a traditional pathway by any means, going from like a data scientist to a solutions architect to an enterprise account executive. But there are similarities throughout that process. And I think what is important to highlight is a lot of like the folks here today and maybe watching have the technical background. Like if you have the technical background and then you want to go into leadership, it's that pathway is easier than having a non-technical background and then going into a leadership position at like a tech company. And so what I would say is like the similarities between data scientist and solutions architect is that you're, at least for me at Databricks, like you're still working with a platform that data scientists use. Like when I was a data scientist, I used Azure Databricks. As a solutions architect at Databricks, I was more so working on enabling and selling to customers to use Azure Databricks. So selling to data scientists to use Databricks as their platform to develop models and experiments and et cetera. And then now as an account executive, I own I own the overall account from a Databricks perspective for the customer. And so, but having the technical background, being able to understand, being able to say, I have been hands-on keyboard. I used to develop within this platform. I then moved into a field engineering role, helping sell it from a technical side, and now owning the overall relationship with the customer for a technical product. It's an interesting evolution. And I would say, like, as I have progressed, I have maybe, I've been less hands-on keyboard on the platform, but my technical experience is still there. And I think if you are at all interested in selling a product that's a technical product, if you have experience being a data scientist or data engineer or data analyst, like that will only help you. And so I don't know, my point of rambling here is just that there's many other pathways, even after a data scientist, that I wasn't aware of, but like that do exist. And actually, if you have that data science background, I think it really enables you to go in other directions. So like you don't have to stay on just the data science path and then be promoted to senior data scientist and then principal and then lead and then maybe a manager or something like that. Like you can also go elsewhere, like in other ladders. And I think that having that foundation is really beneficial.
Yeah, I think those are really good points. And what I'm getting from what you're saying is like you can use data science more as like a launch pad for the different pathways you can have. And I think that was really interesting that you're talking about technical skills that can transfer over, because most people will mention soft skills. You need that in every single job. But having those technical skills can also translate in the different fields you might want to go in, because it's really more about the rationale and your thinking process behind how you solve an issue that can translate to any job as well, not just soft skills.
You said that way better than I said that.
Yeah, no, she really summed it up quite well, and agreed. I mean, from what Audrey said and Angelina, what you were saying too. I mean, it's really a nice kind of perspective to share with people that you don't necessarily have to stay hard and fast to this path, and it's nicer, you know, to really branch out. So I really appreciated the perspectives as well. So Kirstin, so our next esteemed speaker. So Kirstin has a little bit of a different pathway, which has always been very interesting to me. She has transitioned from optometry to data science. And I mean, that in itself is really a unique and inspiring career shift. So Kirstin, what we really want to find out from you is really, and like for persons who probably in a similar boat as you were, what really motivated you along the way in terms of making that career shift, and what would you say from then until now, the key resources or support systems that really kind of helped you along the way in this process?
So for me, initially, what drove me to make that decision was the fact that the field of optometry is extremely saturated locally, and I wanted to expand my opportunities, make myself more employable. And because our world is so tech-driven, I decided that I wanted to look into something that was in the tech field. So I would have enrolled in my master's program, which has given me a foundation in statistics, machine learning. I also would have tried to get practical experience, so I would have competed in the Women in Data Science Kaggle challenges. I also did a nano degree with Udacity, which was based on programming with Python. So that helped me to bridge theory and practicality. Also being part of Women in Data Science TT, as well as Women in Tech Caribbean, like those two communities were very encouraging for me. Because a big thing that, you know, I've dealt with from the start was imposter syndrome, which I found now is very common. And, you know, just hearing from other women who would have experienced the same thing, I realized, okay, well, I'm not, you know, alone in how I feel. So that has been very helpful for me.
Very nice. And I really am happy that you mentioned that imposter syndrome, because I think it's really something that we all go through and still currently go through. I would say personally on my note as well. It's really something that I would like to say adversity breeds character. So sometimes in that way you kind of find your way around. And I think you actually mentioning that, you know, you kind of looked at what was happening in optometry and you made a more calculated decision as well. That's really important. One more thing I wanted to add to ask you is, like, looking ahead now, how do you feel about the future in data science based on, you know, what you have been doing so far in optometry and then moving in that shift?
Yeah, I would say generally I'm really excited because I see like it's so underused locally. So I'm excited to see how it could be applied, even in roles that might not be, you know, a hard and dry data scientist role. You know, if I'm in an optometry role, how am I going to utilize, you know, data science to improve my organization or to improve public health in general? I would say also a concern for me would be just false reliance, false reassurance, because I feel like a lot of people are like a little too trusting of AI. I teach as well, and I see that with my students. You know, they believe whatever ChatGPT tells them, they believe it to be the truth. And so I think a lot of people in general are not really aware that it's not necessarily whatever you're told by AI is 100% accurate and you need to go with it, you know, the whole concept of hallucinations or, I mean, just that lack of, let's say, in healthcare field and clinical judgments, you know, you can't just be totally trusting of what
Of course.
you receive. So that's a concern, I'd say, of mine.
Yeah. No, and that's pretty valid, you know, and we still, even at higher education, you all know, I mean, we have to have all these policies now about use of AI in assignments and all these things. So it's really interesting how you know, everything has been changing quite a bit. So thanks for that, Kirstin. So passing back to Mercedes now in our second question and final question for each of you. Mercedes, as both a data scientist and of course you work in the education sector, so you are an education researcher, what are some innovative ways that you have used data analytics to address the challenges in the education sector, particularly within Trinidad and Tobago?
Yes, so the whole reason that I actually even got into data science was because, I mean, I was always working with data, but, you know, similar to Kirstin, I came from a different background. My background was psychology and economics. But having worked with the data and, of course, continuously hearing about data science, machine learning, I saw it really having a huge potential to make improvements in our education sector. And I had this specific idea about, you know, using all the data that we collect to predict, like I mentioned, my research was predicting students at risk. So students at risk of school failure and students at risk of just poor general outcome. So that was one interesting area that I looked at for my thesis. We predicted students, they're using both individual data as well as data about the school background. We were predicting their likelihood to successfully complete secondary school, as well as to have different outcomes. So suspension, we looked at mental health as well, which was really important to me. Additionally, we've been able to use like large-scale regression models to help schools assess their effectiveness. So for those of you who know about the secondary sector, education sector in Trinidad, because of the placement system, it's not easy for schools to just use their exam results to directly measure their effectiveness, because we place students based on their ability. So we came up with a way for schools to be able to use, well, we do the analysis for them, and they're able to use the data that we provide to them to really assess their effectiveness. And we even take it a step further, showing them how to use that data to strategically plan for their school's improvement.
Oh, that's so fascinating. So that really actually just shows you how much innovation, you know, really is involved, and you know how we can actually use the data for good in that sense. So
yeah, and that's just touching on one small part of it. I think the potential is really like huge.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe even helping curriculum shifts and these types of things too. And then more
Absolutely.
personalized learning, adaptive learning, that sort of thing. So I'm also
Absolutely.
interested in that as well. So I'm always like to hear Mercedes speak on it. So I pass it back to Audrey, so you can give Angelina her next question.
Yeah, so when Angelina was in college, she did play volleyball and like represented her graduate student council at Claremont, which is very unique in terms of like the teamwork and leadership and academic focus she had. So from those experiences on the court, in the sorority, or in the classroom, is it shaped your approach in collaboration or problem solving in your job? And what advice would you give to someone trying to develop both their technical ability and being able to connect with others in the field?
Great question, Audrey. I would say, in general, I saw this quote once, and if I think it's very true. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I feel like very applicable to me because, you know, I'm an impatient person. I like to go fast. And so I don't like having to wait for others. But I've realized with a lot of those, you know, team events and the things that you mentioned that I've been a part of, that if you want to go far, you have to go together. And I think that is so important and so true. And like, if you want to go far in life, if you want to go far in your career, go far with your relationships, etc., like go far in terms of building technical skills, or go far in building social skills, like doing it together with groups of people, it will be much more effective. And so that would be my advice. Like, if I just had one slogan, it would be that. And yeah, it's easier said than done for me because again, I'm not very patient, but I've found that it to be very true to work together, and you can go much farther.
I love that quote so much, because I also tend to want to work alone, but I feel like having those connections with other people, you can just also not just rely on them. It's like a symbiotic relationship, and everyone will just be able to grow faster. And although it might be at a slower pace, you'll just be able to learn so much from each other, because you have not just one person's thoughts, you're connecting with other people, and then it can branch off from that. So I really love what you said there.
Thanks.
That's perfect. Thanks for that, Angelina. I mean, it really shows that we all need each other, and I think that's super important. Like, I really like that slogan. Like, you should just like have that like branded, is really to go with, go together and really collaborate. And I think now, especially like with all these multidisciplinary fields and how people going from one different field to the next, it's always great to have other perspectives, and that also in itself reduces bias when you kind of have other people on board to kind of really give their ideas as well. So thanks for that. So Kirstin, so this is our final question, and then we'll address some of the questions you'll have for our speakers. As a founder and mentor, Kirstin is a founder and mentor of the Salt and Light Young Adult group. In this group, she has guided young adults in their growth and career journeys. So in the field of data science, where women are still underrepresented, how can mentorship, in your view, how can mentorship and community-driven initiatives like yours empower more women to enter and thrive in this industry? It's a loaded question, but throwing it over to you.
So definitely, I think mentorship and community are game changers for any underrepresented groups. So in Salt and Light, we try to foster belonging, providing safe spaces for dialogue, mentorship, but also like personal development style workshops, which I could see being really helpful in tech fields, in the field of data science. So, because for women, seeing role models and having those safe environments to ask questions that you might think are silly helps combat that imposter syndrome. So initiatives that like mentor pairings or spotlighting women's contributions to the field, and even advocating for inclusive hiring that can shift the tide. And when I say inclusive hiring, is not just about recruiting women, but retaining women in the field, because when we are able to thrive, then we then become mentors ourselves, and that creates a ripple effect.
I like that you said that. We actually do become mentors. Yeah. So it's really, really inspiring what you just said. And I think we always have to see ourselves in that way, that we in any field that we're in, we actually are mentors of that actual field. We actually consistently mentor in person. So that's really nice, a really nice sentiment there that Kirstin shared. I also saw someone said in the chat, I don't know if was this for Kirstin, Shannon, or was this for Angelina? Because I probably can ask Kirstin this question, but let me know if there was specifics with what seems to be large scale layoffs and hiring freezes in data science and the tech field in general. Would you still go into data science if you were just starting out? So I probably say, Kirstin, you could start off, and then maybe we could go to Angelina and Mercedes.
Well, yes, I'm still trying to do that. Just because, as I was mentioning before, I'm not necessarily trying to get into a data science titled role, but because it's so applicable to other fields, it will give me a competitive edge. And I've experienced that in interviews, say for an optometry position, it's like, oh, you're studying data science. How can this help our organization? So I definitely think the future of data science is not necessarily in a very strict role, but I think we're going to begin seeing more roles where you need data science skills, but you may not necessarily be a career data scientist. So I think it's still worthwhile.
And I'll pass that on, because the thing is, what I could also mention is that in terms of Trinidad, so in the Trinidad landscape might be a little bit different. I kind of want to get also Angelina's perspective, being in the US, because here we're in a smaller island, and probably data science has now kind of starting to come more mainstream. But Angelina, for your end, how do you see that in terms of like layoffs and hiring freezes, and would you have still gone into the data science field if you were starting out, knowing what you know now?
Yeah, I haven't seen layoffs or freezes around that space, but I think it's really important to choose a growing company. If you choose a company that's growing, and you just, get like some sort of position within that company, like it's going to be a rocket ship, and then you can kind of figure out exactly what seat you want on the rocket ship, if that makes sense. But I would say yes, I would still go into that field. I would emphasize though, to upskill yourself in the cloud technologies, because if you have the skill sets of an AWS, like there's many certifications AWS offer, Azure offers, GCP, Google offer, as well as Databricks. And if you have those skill sets, then you can easily transfer those technical skills to other positions within the cloud space. So I would just emphasize, or I would say, yes, I would still go into data science, but emphasize to like make sure the work that you're doing is on one of those clouds, because those clouds are not going anywhere, and that skill set will like continue to be needed for the foreseeable future.
Definitely, and I like how you plugged for these skill sets, because I think sometimes we keep thinking that things are shifting so fast that we need to learn everything, but some core, actual core skills would remain, and I think that's important that you mentioned that as well. Mercedes, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's already been said. For me, I consider myself, yes, a data scientist, but more along the side of a researcher. And I think data science and research goes hand in hand. I see it as a really important tool and a really important set of skills that eventually, I would say every researcher is going to eventually need to have. So I don't see it as exclusively, a tech kind of field or occupation. I think it's essential, and there's potential for data science in every industry.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think from what everybody has shared, it really shows, having those different perspectives really helps, especially in the field where, because I think also Angelina was also pointing out the courses, and each of you would have gone through different steps, had different resources, useful resources. So I wanted to ask, and then I'll throw this back to Audrey. Can you all share like just any specific resource that stood out to you that helped? Because I know Angelina was mentioning like, the cloud computing and these things are important. Anything from Mercedes and Kirstin, and then Audrey, you can also add to that if you have anything that you also think is useful.
So funny enough, for me, my biggest resource has been YouTube. Throughout my master's, throughout even, before I started the master's in data science, when I was just working in data analytics, YouTube all the way. You can find so many different tutorials and just people speaking about their experiences in this field from many different perspectives that for me, it's been the most useful. Even sometimes for fun, I would sit down and just watch videos about how people got into the space, what they would do differently if they were just starting out, as well as like more technical tutorials. But yeah, YouTube.
Right. No, that makes sense. And Kirstin, what about you?
I agree, YouTube is an excellent resource. I would say for me specifically, I really enjoyed the nano degree that I did with Udacity, just because it broke things down to a really basic level, as if you had no experience with programming beforehand, which, fun facts about me, I did not have any programming experience before I started my master's. So I found it was really helpful.
Actually want to throw it to Audrey. Audrey, do you have any like resources or anything? Because Audrey herself, I mean, she's now going into, higher education soon.
Yeah.
Anything that you would like to share that would be useful, persons on their path that has helped you?
For me, I think that I always listen to podcasts. So I would suggest listening to like the Women in Data Science podcast because you can kind of hear their stories. But also I've taken this course called 21st Century Teaching and Learning in Data Science. So I'm gonna add that to the chat. But it's an online
excellent.
course and
Yeah.
it's not as much technical skills, but it's how you can learn how to communicate data. And I thought that it was really interesting if you want to just kind of get your toes in the water on what it's about.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Audrey. So we'll keep an eye on this as well. Are there any other questions in the chat for any of our speakers? Anybody has any burning questions?
Letetia, before you continue, if I could actually add.
Oh, yes, please, go on.
Because I was thinking, when we spoke about resources, I was mainly thinking, tech and online. But I actually think, like, similar to what we're doing here, like, just finding community in this space and being able to meet and share with like-minded people has been one of the biggest resources for me.
Of course.
Yes, I would say that as well. Even being in the master's program, aside from the formal education aspect, being able to network and communicate with people, yeah, that's been huge.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for that, Mercedes. And I think community is very important in a field like this. So I agree. I just have one question for Angelina, and maybe if she's able to tell us any specific certification or anything on Databricks that you think might be useful for the audience to look into, because I know Audrey just mentioned that link, so I thought that might be useful if you have any advice. Yeah.
Yeah, it depends if I would assume everyone here is interested in the data science one. There's a data science track. There's also a data science associate certification. There's a data science professional certification. And then there's similar ones for a data engineer and then a data analyst and I think like a platform engineer. But yeah, I would definitely plug those. Of course, I'm biased because I work there, but those along with like the clouds, like the AWS, you can get solution architect certifications, I believe, and similar with Azure and GCP. So in my opinion, those are really important and can also be leveraged to help you get, positions or connections at many different companies.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Angelina.
Sure.
So that's in the chat. I'll just send it again. And any closing remarks or anybody wants to say anything before we close off, I'll throw it back to Audrey. I'll just mention the link again from Angelina, and all of our speakers are available on LinkedIn if you want to connect with them as well. Audrey, any closing remarks? Any last thoughts?
I would just like to thank everyone for being here today, especially to support us, and we're just really glad that you're here. Hearing your questions and your engagement just also makes us inspired too. So thank you for joining.
Okay, great. Yes, thank you. We really definitely want, and thank you so much, Kimberly. Yes, I mean, really, this was quite a collaboration between Audrey and I. We really want to hopefully do more of this in the future and have spotlight talks and have other speakers come on board to really speak about their work. We have I don't know if it's ready, Priya. Do we have the link? If we don't have the link ready now, we can send it. Priya has a link for a feedback form, so we'll just send it to you all in the chat. And please feel free to let us know your thoughts on any other sessions that you want to see, because we also host other workshops and webinars as well. And happy to have these integrations from our speakers in terms of what they shared today, really from the personal perspectives and also from the professional perspectives as well. Really, really happy to have them here. So the feedback form is in the chat, and if there are no other questions from you all, I would really like to sincerely thank each of you for joining today, and also really giving of your time and talent and abilities to share with us. And I will really like to give a special thank you to Audrey, who has done a lot behind the scenes with the planning and assistant with the events and collaboration. She's truly a shining star, and really happy to have her on board. So that's it from us. Speakers, any last words before we sign off? Any parting words for the audience? Mercedes, Kirstin, then Kirstin and Angelina.
Yeah, sure. I was actually just typing. I actually just wanted to say thanks to you all for providing this space for us, this platform, to really share and learn from each other, because it's always refreshing. Even working every day in this field, it's still really refreshing to hear from different perspectives, to hear what different people are doing in this space. So I always really enjoy this chat.
Well, thanks, Mercedes. Kirstin?
Yes, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it. And I also enjoyed listening to Mercedes and Angelina's perspectives. I'm going to be looking up some of those courses
Yeah,
to
me
up my
too.
cloud skills. So yeah, I just appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And Angelina, it's been a pleasure meeting you. Any last words to the audience?
Yep, I just the same sentiment. Thank you for putting this together. It's always awesome and inspiring to hear from other ladies in the field, especially internationally. And yeah, this was very awesome. Thank you for including me.
Okay, great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today, and we hope you have the rest of, well, it's evening here. I think it's morning for some of you all. So hope you enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and keep being inspired on your journeys. Connect with us on LinkedIn pages and YouTube channel, and we will see you in the next one. So take care and have a good day. Bye.
Bye.